Morning.
Hi, Gordon. It's very nice to talk to you. First thing I'd like to know is how do you look back on that experience of presenting Tiswas? What are your sort of first memories when I say that to you?
I'll just answer gut now. Okay, so it's bittersweet. And as I get older, and as you can most probably tell I did, I now look on it back with more affection than I did at the time. And the reason is, and somebody once said to me, said, look, I know you were in the last series, and I know everybody remembers Chris and Lenny and John and Sally, but you were part of TV history. And let's not forget that. Even if it was in the last episode that doesn't get the best critical acclaim, is that people say you were in television history. So that will do for me at the age of 70.
I mean, I thought it was a brilliant series. And
what do the other members of your institution think of it?
They're locked away, unfortunately.
I'll give you a quick thumbnail sketch of what the original series was intended to be. I went to Lewis Rudd, who was head of Thing at ATV, and I got myself the job on Tiswas because I had heard early that Chris was leaving. That's all I knew, Chris was leaving. So I thought, if I join that team with Lenny and John Gorman and Sally, wow, that's going to be great. What I didn't know was that Chris was leaving and starting up a whole new franchise, Late at Night OTT. So what I didn't realise, we were going in as a brand new team. So we were Tiswas 2. And so I didn't realise that. But the brief was to return it to a Saturday morning children's programme, not a programme that people with hangovers in universities and parents at home drag their kids to watch and slightly anarchic. The idea was it was to get back to being a children's TV programme with pop groups and cartoons. And that was the brief. And what happened was the fan base, who could watch both programmes, didn't like that, is the impression we were getting. People who'd never seen Tiswas before in Northern Ireland, you'll know more about this, John, than I will, Northern Ireland and I think Teesside, the northeast, they loved us and our ratings were great. In fact, they were the only two areas in which we used to smash a swap shop. But the rest of the country were comparing us to Chris. I mean, look at them. They'd been running a marathon and we were about to start a sprint. They were comparing us to Chris and Lenny and John. So we didn't stand too much of a chance. Plus, there was some background politics of a personal nature and a company nature.
I mean, there were some amazing moments on your series. I mean, you worked with Spike Milligan.
Well, I'm glad you say that because it's funny because at the moment I'm running a story time for about 100 kids at night, 7:30 at night on my Facebook page, and I read a story to them. At the end of every night, we read out Spike Milligan's Smiling is Infectious poem, which is just perfect for moments like this. I might even read it for you later. But whatever you say about Tiswas and my part in it, what you can't take away from it is that I was flanned by Spike Milligan, and I don't think there are many people in my street who can say that.
He fitted in so perfectly to that show.
I never forget the day we got a letter. Now, I think every one of us who was in the room at that time will claim that that letter was to us personally and we showed it to the rest of the office. Okay, but we got a letter saying this is the best thing on television, Spike Milligan here and all that. And everybody said in unison, invite him on, invite. And he came in. And I think he was on the same show. You guys know more about it. Was he on the same show as Frank Carson?
Yeah, they did Plastermind.
Oh, can you imagine? I mean, Frank Carson, Spike Milligan, Sally getting... she was in the chair, wasn't she? It was that one. I mean, it's like to be involved with your heroes as well. 1 minute you'd be sort of nattering, passing the time of day about the weather with Bob Geldof. And then you'd be watching Spike Milligan. I remember Spike Milligan, I was stood behind him, waiting to go on, and he stood back, and he trod on my foot. And I said, mind my toe. And he turned around, he goes, certainly, how long will you be?
Beautiful. I mean, he was like...
for me.
he was one of the greatest improvisers there was, and it was perfect for him.
I was watching him on. Go on, you're asking. The question.
No. Well, I was going to ask what the experience. What was the experience like of presenting something like that live for 2 hours every morning? That must have been quite intense.
Yes, I thought it was going to be easy. I thought because I'd been brought up on live radio, and I'd done Cheggers Place Pop and some schools television for 5 or 6 years. That's all the telly I'd done. I thought, oh, this is great because you don't have to bother about mistakes. You just carry on. So this is me looking on the bright side of life. I thought, no problem there. But then one is nerves kick in. And if you're not used to that sort of live telly, where anything can go wrong. But not only was it live, it was very disciplined. There were only certain areas where water could go. You bear in mind that in a TV studio, there's cables all over the floor and cameras everywhere. So only so much you can do with foam, throwing it around a studio with expensive lenses everywhere. So I wasn't. Plus, I was also a radio man. And anybody who works in radio will know this, that when you get your first job in radio, they put a very powerful magnet, they implant it into your nose, and it will find a microphone anywhere in the world, this magnet. So you're always looking for a microphone. And I didn't realise I got this till I looked at my original program. And for the first couple or even 3 Tiswas, I was constantly talking like this. I looked like a carp looking for bait. I was looking like this. And I was constantly talking to the microphone, which was about 7 foot above me. And I never thought it might be a good idea to occasionally look at a camera like that. So if you'll notice when you're talking to me, I talk like this. I'm talking to you like this, and I'm doing so, which is what radio presenters do. So it took me a long time, perhaps too long, to get used to the technology of TV. Technology was first, and presentation was second, and I couldn't get there. I never quite got there. I didn't know what I was doing.
There are some other questions from people online, I believe. Is that right?
Oh, they're important. Let's do them.
Okay, well, I've got one here. Gordon, where was the Year of the Pie single recorded, and what was it like at the sessions?
Right. The Year of the Pie. Have you got that? Right. Right. Can you put your thumbs up if you can still hear me?
Oh, yes, we can still hear you.
Good. Good.
So where was it recorded and what was it like at the sessions?
Right. It was recorded. Now, I'm just looking on the back. It says Tower Bell Records. It was recorded at Chas and Dave's studio, and it had all been arranged by Mike Smith, Sally's husband, and it was, I think, was it Red or Yellow Balloon Records? That session was arranged by Chas and Dave, plus lots of pop groups at the time came along. It was almost pre-Band-Aid. But we were raising it for nothing other than awareness. And the recording studio was okay, but myself and Fogwell Flax had been given the wrong address. We were given an address somewhere in London, and Foggy and I were not Londoners. So we get ourselves down on the afternoon of recording and spend a good 2.5 hours walking around, pre-mobile phones. And if anybody's ever tried to phone a recording studio during a recording, you'll know that you're on a hiding to nothing. When we finally got there, we went in and everybody was looking daggers at us because they couldn't do anything until we basically got there. They did put down some tracks. So Chas and Dave were, and I guess their band, somebody will tell me otherwise. It was very enjoyable. It was great because there's a lot of ad-libbing in it. And at one point, there's a bit in it when I say there's a talking bit in part. I don't know if you're going to play it, but there's a talking bit. And I whispered into Sally's ear, I'll say hi, Sal, if you say, yes, Gordon. So we both got a name check on the record, and it was unashamed self-publicity. It was great. It was not the Bucket of Water song, I have to say, but a lot of people say it was their favourite. And the Custard Pie song on the back has got the immortal chorus, in the mush, in the mush, in the mush. It was great, and it was very well recorded. And there it is. It's one of the few things I've got left from Tiswas, apart from a bruised ego.
It's one of the few things I've got left from Tiswas.
Oh, there you go. You've obviously ironed yours.
I've still got it myself. Gordon, do you still see or keep in touch with any of the team, Sally, Den, etc.?
No, a lot of people think in show business, once you've worked with somebody, you're then out every day on the golf course with them. And in some cases, that's true. I was briefly in touch with Den at one point. I don't think he was too well. Foggy, I met up with a couple of times and worked with a couple of times in Cabaret. We met up a couple of years ago in Warrington. He's doing gangbusters on the cruises, and he'll always work. Foggy. He does a Sting tribute act. Foggy does a Sting tribute act, and apparently it's absolutely wonderful. Sally, she and I worked on the same radio station down south for a while, but never met. We were at opposite ends of the clock. So it's one of those where one was working on one time. We never met. We talked a couple of times. And let me think. David Rappaport, we met up a couple of times, I think for cabarets just afterwards. And I'm trying to think. Trevor James. I've been in touch with him recently. He doesn't do that. Do you remember Trevor, Sid the Parrot?
I do indeed, yeah.
Yeah, well, I met up with him, but he won't. The parrot is malted, totally malted, in his attic, and I tried many times to get it to bring it down and come and do the odd show I was doing, but he's not. That's all done and dusted and behind him. So I'm trying to think of anybody. I occasionally meet people who were in the cage and go, "Oh, I was in the cage," but that's about it. No, not really.
Speaking of which, Gordon, I have a clip where you're commentating over something very messy. It's one of the messiest clips I've ever seen in Tiswas history. So I'm just going to play this out now.
Yes, it's amazing scenes at the ATV studios this morning. The Phantom Flan Flinger has left the negotiations. You can see him now outside the building. Has the Prince of Piesters, Baron of Buckets, and Marquis of Muck, and King of Custard abdicated? Has he left his brother Bungus to go it alone? Is he, in fact, a white leg? His comrades in Custard seem to have been left in the lurch. Will Hans Flans take this kick in the pants and be caught with his flans down? Will Who-Flung Flan fling down his flans and flee? Will the cheeky chapati chucker chuck down his chapatis and chicken out? Let's go back outside. Well, there's the challenger ready to wreak revenge on our flanless phantom. Will Star Chucker chuck rice, or rise up and surprise and chuck pies? But hang on a mo. Our fantastic flan flinger has flipped and fled. The flinger has flunked it. Or has he got something up it? Half a mo, he's flanneling with the flantastic foam firer, and he's wiping out the flannel wagster. What a foaming moment it is. The Phantom Flan Flinger is still the undisputed.
Well, that was absolute madness going out there in Bridge Street. So, Gordon, tell me, how was that arranged? The health and safety things going wrong there. Let's go over to you.
No, in actual fact, I'm going to correct you. There was an awful lot of health and safety, I've got to tell you, because the unions, the ATV unions were very strong in those days. I mean, almost draconian, very strong. You couldn't. So one is as best as can be in a situation like that, as you saw. There was a lot of rules, right? Okay. Now, what happened was. That was the end, and the credits were rolling. And the idea was it was just going to roll, and I was going to do a bit. But my dad, who used to be in telly, said, never leave a studio, even though everybody says it's clear, never leave a studio until the programme has finished going out. Doesn't matter what the floor manager says, you can all go to your dressing rooms now and get your phone off you. So I always used to stay in the studio on Tiswas. I was Johnny No Mate at the end on the desk. And then I'd go around and thank all the crew, another thing my dad told me to do. And on that one, that was one of the ones where I'm glad I did stay there, because that meant when all that happened, I could do an ad-lib sort of commentary. That's where my radio stuff kicked in, because they said, oh, go on then. Go on, just talk over it. Just talk over it. This is what they want, and that's it, and he's back, and he's fighting. And I can't remember the exact thing I said. But it was the ultimate as well. I think Tiswas had always wanted to do one of the largest flannings of all time, and that was Benny and the team doing their best. I've just realised behind me, by the way, I realise you can see my GGTV. This is Grandad TV, which I do every night at 7:30, reading stories to kids on the internet. This is my studio.
I mean, that Gunge Gun was one of the best things I've ever seen on television. I mean, it was incredible.
I think we got it from an airport or the fire service. Matthew will know more about that, but he's bounced off.
Were there any particularly bizarre occurrences during your time of presenting Tiswas?
On air or in the hotel later that night?
Both.
It's very strange because you'd think so, wouldn't you? But one is I'm trying to think of them, and I will tell you. But two, it was bloody hard work. You started. I never worked so hard in my life. Radio was a doddle, but television was hard work. There's a lot of writing. And I was working with one of the top writers in the world, David McKellar. And whenever you see anything like Two Ronnies or Frost or anything like that, the name David McKellar will come up on those credits. So I was working with him, and he wanted to get every word right. He taught me a lot. Glyn Edwards was a hard taskmaster, and he wanted to get that show right. I was a fish out of water, and I needed sorting. So we spent a lot of time doing scripts, believe it or not. Let me tell you a little bit about the scripts, by the way, as well. I used to have a folder, a loose leaf folder, ring binder, with plastic sheets in it for obvious reasons, to keep the script dry. The trouble is with that, it meant I knew my script. I was safe with my script. In a live show, you don't want somebody with their script looking down all the time. But as I say, I was from radio stuff. And I remember once we were in the canteen, and I felt a tap on my shoulder. Spike Milligan would do a joke about that. I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned around. There was Mel Smith, the late Mel Smith. And he turned around and he said, "Do you mind if I just have a look in that ring binder?" And as I opened it, he turned over. He says, "I thought you guys would have plastic covered scripts." So it was. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of rehearsal. We were in. I think we got in on the Tuesday, and we rehearsed Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You had to get it all right. Wasn't much hanging around, and then we went live on the Saturday, and then it was a couple of hours session in the bar on Saturday lunchtime, and it was in the days when ATV had a bar in the building. In fact, I have heard that some people, when they weren't on screen, used to wander out of the studio down to the bar and came back a lot happier than they left. So the point is, it was a bizarre program on screen, and it's often the case, the madder the show on screen, the more well-behaved it is off screen. Now, late at night and afterwards, it was pandemonium. But that's the with show business. There's a bit rock and roll in the hotel afterwards, the Holiday Inn. I think they're still quivering.
Well, was there a camaraderie between you all?
Yes. Because I've just paused there, that's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it? One is I've said I was a fish out of water. Two, I'd also got what I now realised, and I don't know if it's an official term, is imposter syndrome. And that is when you get anywhere, particularly a new place to work or to join a team, you feel like you're the odd one out. You feel everybody else is a couple of miles ahead of you. And you also feel they will always know much more than you. And I think I suffered from that at the time. And as is always the case, when certain people spot that, they go for the jugular. And there was some nasty moments. So there wasn't that. But there was camera. Once you get in, Foggy and I got on really well. Myself and Den and I got on really well. Sally, it wasn't that there was no camaraderie. It was that she hadn't got time. She was working so hard because Sally was head of music. And with Mike and her, they were always on the phone, always arranging. So pre-mobile phones as well, always in their office, always running the bands through because the bands had to do a rehearsal. So it was that. David Rappaport and I... David Rappaport, if I could get back to my hotel room and go through my lines, I would do. But often I used to babysit for David Rappaport's son, who we used to bring up. So I go on, you go down to the bar, I'll look after him. And I do my script in David Rappaport's room, looking after his kiddie who fell fast asleep.
I mean, it was still a really popular show as far as I know. I mean, I think, there were people on the football terraces singing In the Mush.
Yes. Of course, I wouldn't know that. We had terrible crits when we started the last series. I remember the Sun saying something about Gordon Astley would look more at home at a PTA meeting than presenting Tiswas. And I wasn't anarchic. I had hadn't got that alpha male thing that Chris had got, and Lenny, well, not John. John was great, but I never met them till after Tiswas. I never met those two till after Tiswas. But there were they. They were, as I say, they were running a marathon and still running in people's minds. And then we came along doing, "Hello, children. How are you today? What did you have for breakfast?" And then, "Oh, here comes a custard pie." So we were a bit too well behaved for the anarchists in the audience and the student population. Is how I saw it. Bad crits as well. I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to crits at all. So it was a bit sort of, we felt very much the underdog. But if I may, I know I ramble on, just butt in whenever you. I'm going to tell you a story now about Chris and myself. We were kept apart because I was ostensibly taking over from Chris. I wasn't. I was taking over from Sally. Sally took over from Chris, but that wasn't how we put it. So I'm on the desk with Sally, and we were kept apart. Chris and myself were kept apart. The only time we talked during the series was once on the phone, just once. I remember that. Years later, there was something, and Tiswas was in the news, or Chris was being interviewed on a local radio station, WM in Birmingham, on the Ed Doolan show, and they thought it'd be a good idea to phone me up. So they called me up, and I'm a bit self-effacing about it. And I actually said, I'm going to be honest, I just don't think I did a very good job. And Chris said, "Shut up. Just shut up there, Gordon." He said, "I tell you what, I think you lot made a very good fist of it. You were given the poison chalice." I'd got that kind of phrase always in my mind, a poison chalice. He said, "We had the same on OTT at night." He said, "What we did was we'll take the adult side of Tiswas to late night, then you can have bums and boobs and all that sort of thing, and Alexi Sale. And you lot had to go back to being a children's show. And we presented two shows, Gordon, that nobody really wanted." And I thought, well, one is that was generous, but it put it into perspective for me. So that's how Chris saw it, and that's how I see it now, in a strange sort of way. Nobody really wanted it, except people like yourself, Dredgy, because it's great, because you're pointing out to me that there were some good little bits in there, nothing to be ashamed about.
I didn't really want to bring up the strange situation we're in, but Gordon, how are you coping in this challenging situation?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm in what I call voluntary solitary. And because of technology like what we are using now and other stuff, I'm really keeping in touch with the family. Okay, I can't kiss and cuddle the grandkids and stuff like that, but we're talking all the time. We're nattering all the time. I do a thing at night, what we're doing now, which is a story time on my Facebook on Gordon Astley. And it started off as me, because my kids were missing me, my grandkids were missing me, I used to read them a story every night. And then everybody, when my daughter put up a picture of me reading a story via the laptop, everybody said, "Oh, can you read us a story? Can you read us? Oh, can we all?" So they did a sort of, and we got about 50 or 60 kids sit down at 7:30 every night, 7 nights a week, and I read them a story from an ever-decreasing selection of children's books, which I've got. I haven't got many. But neighbours are starting to leave them on my front door now. And so because of that, I have remembered your question, by the way. Because of that, I'm coping quite well. I'm allowed out for an hour to do a run. I do 5K runs and stuff like that.
I've got to mention my own personal interest. Sorry to go about myself. I didn't want to be self-indulgent, but park run. It's the first time I've missed it.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Well, I never got it. Why do they run park runs at 9:30 in the morning? Can't they do them at 2:30 in the afternoon when they get back? But anyway, I do my own park run, race against myself. So I'm keeping quite fit in spite of the look. I tell you what, when you're in voluntary, what is it about the need for ice cream and cake? What is it? I've never been a sweet tooth person. One is I'm keeping myself occupied. I've always been a bit of a solitary person anyway, throughout my life. And that's radio. You sit in the studio talking to yourself. I did that for 50 years. So I'm quite used to it. And I'm just trying to keep other people's spirits up, including my own. And just what will be, will be. I think the current phrase is, it is what it is. Work out in life the things you can change and the things you can't, the difference between the two. And then just live your life minute by minute. And if you do that without thinking about the future, without going online, never read the comments. only watch half an hour of news a day, never first thing in the morning, nothing much has happened overnight, folks, and just sort of keep in your own world and remember your world. If you can keep it as nice and clean and uninfected as you can. I mean, most of my family have had the virus, so they're elsewhere. They're over in Manchester. I'm here on the Wirral, and one day we'll all get back together again. But at the moment, they're sick and tired of me on their screens, which is nice.
Nobody's sick and tired of you yet, as far as I can see. I'm going to leave you with the final question. Do you think Tiswas could ever be brought back?
I would say no, and not for bad reasons, for good reasons. You've got to bear in mind that Tiswas followed in a long line of gunging on movies and television, right? And gunging has continued, and I would say this wouldn't I? Never quite been achieved. And the past is a foreign country, and it is most probably best left there. Tiswas is mostly best left there, and occasionally you can watch it. I say this as well. I don't think they could afford it. I don't think they could afford Tiswas. I mean, Ant and Dec on a Saturday night. I guess that's in the remit, isn't it?
I think they did a good stab with Tiswas Reunited. That felt like a brilliant primetime show. And that is, my colleague Andrew Wooding said, that is what OTT should have been.
It was, yes. The only thing is, I was with Foggy just after that, and Foggy was upset. None of our team were invited.
Yeah, you're kind of airbrushed out of history in a kind of way.
Say again?
You're kind of airbrushed out of history. Really,
we were airbrushed out, and I thought that was a bit. What's the word? Not nice. I just didn't think it was nice. We weren't up to the spec that those guys were. We never made it big time. Chris went on to Who Wants to Sit Opposite a Millionaire. Sally does what she does. Lenny, went gangbusters. But even if they just put the B team, which we were, in the audience. And I'm not saying this out of bitterness and boo-hoo. I just thought that would have been the right thing to do. I don't know how the people agree with me on that or not. And it didn't matter that we weren't there, but wouldn't have been nice if we were. And I got a feeling perhaps somebody got a mini axe to grind and ground it.
Okay, right. We'll have to leave you there.
And on that happy note.
I'll see you later. See you later, Gordon. There's so much support for you out there. We're going to have you back next week if you're available.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going to be running this and raising money for the Kiddies Hospital, which is absolutely brilliant. And I can see that so many people are now contributing. Thank you, Amy. I love you too as well. And I just do this as I say. Goodbye. Now over to telly-selly time.
Telly-selly time. Cheers, Gordon. There you go. Gordon's alive.